Hello, everyone. Good night and good evening, wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in. I know from my guest and I, we are in two different time zones today. So it's evening for her and night for me on the East Coast. But my name is Laverne Gordon. A lot of you know that I run Love Life Now Foundation that promotes year-round awareness against domestic violence. And we try to keep the issue in the forefront as much as possible so that folks can be in the know about what's happening around abuse, sort of talk about what the red flags are, what's happening with folks in this space. And we're always talking about red flags. We're always talking about red flags on social media. So I'm so glad that you could join us tonight and be here to talk about another big type of abuse that often people don't even know that is happening to them. And that is financial abuse, right? You've heard about it in the news sometimes, you've read about it in, a magazine story, but what does that even entail? So my guest tonight is Shelley DeVito, and
Hi, everybody.
Shelley's all the way out in Los Angeles, California. So right now it's 5 o'clock for her and 8 o'clock for me. Tired, but loving it. So what we're talking about tonight, as I mentioned, is financial abuse. And Shelley is a survivor of domestic violence, but also financial abuse. So I'm so happy you could be here, Shelley. Shelley, why don't you just go ahead and introduce folks and tell people exactly what you do now, which is sort of full circle based on what you went through in the past.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. So I am now working at a domestic violence shelter. So I'm kind of like a counselor. I answer the hotline. I help when people call in. We have a shelter that we can bring people in for a 45-day stay. We offer them referrals, legal guidance, court advocacy, food, shelter. We also have a transitional program where they can live rent-free for up to 18 months, where we also provide food, clothing, shelter, legal assistance, financial assistance, housing for the future, helping them with school, finding jobs. We have a school for their children. We offer so many things. I facilitate an art therapy group for survivors there. So we talk about
I love
empowerment.
that.
Yeah, we talk about empowerment and positivity and self-care and all kinds of things. So I do that. And I started off as a volunteer, and I just loved it so much that they offered me a job and I jumped at it.
I
And
love that.
I also do some DV trainings whenever we do trainings 2 or 3 times a year. And so I offer trainings as well.
That's awesome. That's pretty awesome. And then, like I said, that's
Mhm.
completely full circle because you are also a
Yes.
survivor of domestic violence. So
Mhm.
why don't you tell folks a little bit about sort of what got you to the point of being a victim of this issue and how long you ended up being in that type of relationship?
So I was married for 17 years
Hmm.
to a man who was, the typical when you think of an abuser. Sometimes he was very controlling, very mean, very aggressive. And then there were other times where he was very kind and very sweet. So I was kind of thrown off my feet all the time.
Hmm.
He was very emotionally and verbally abusive, telling me everything was always my fault.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of walking on eggshells, waiting for the next outburst to happen.
Hmm.
He was extremely controlling with finances. He paid all of the bills. If I ever wanted to ask about any type of bill or pay for anything, he always told me, in a joking way, like how stupid I was and I wasn't able
Yeah.
to do it. And so he asked me, I had to give receipts when I went grocery shopping. He told me
Yeah.
what stores to go to. If I bought butter and we already had butter, he would go into a rage and throw things and tell me how stupid I was for doing it. I
So
just
that's
was. Go
That's
ahead.
interesting, and not to cut you off, but so you're sort of describing some of the things that constituted what financial abuse was. Can you give a definition of what financial abuse is? Like, what is the layman's term for financial abuse?
For me, I would say somebody controlling how you spend your money, not allowing you
Hmm.
access to your money, and, just watching your every move and how you spend everything, and most of it was making me feel inadequate, and almost that I felt that I didn't know how to spend money because I was
Yeah.
told so much how dumb I was and that I wasn't able to do it. So I didn't have any confidence in even doing it.
Yeah. So you deferred always to him.
I always deferred because if I didn't, there would always be a blow up as well. And I was very cautious. I had two small children. I did not like blow ups in front of my children. I always wanted to protect them. So
Yeah.
anytime I spoke up for myself, it would be a screaming, yelling, throwing things match. So I try to avoid that. And
Mm,
so I kind of learned going with the flow and letting him do things his way would stop the blow. It didn't stop the blow ups, but it would lessen them
mm,
to some degree. So
yeah.
I kind of allowed that,
Yeah.
sadly.
And it's interesting how you mentioned that, in with him sort of questioning what you did around money, that also came with the blow ups, right? So
Mhm.
it wasn't just that you were sort of sort of trudging lightly around the issue of money. It was his sort of temperament around you even sort of trying to address the issue of money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was no communication. Everything, anytime I tried to bring up anything, it turned into an argument, and it turned into how he thought everything I said was challenging him. And so there was a lot of, you're so stupid, you don't know what you're talking about. And I
Mhm.
was just always so aware of my children sitting there listening to all of that.
Yeah, yeah. And so you tried to protect them.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so along the way, how did the interactions between him and you end up affecting your children? Not just around money, but around their well-being.
Oh, everything. My children were crying to me. They were they were in fear also. Like they would say to me, "Mommy, please don't tell Daddy. Please don't tell Daddy we bought this. Don't tell Daddy we're doing this." Or if he started yelling at me, they would say, "Please don't argue with Daddy. Don't get Daddy mad." That type of thing. We were all walking on eggshells as to his mood
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for the day.
Yeah, yeah. And so as it over the span of the marriage, what made you realize that at some point that this was bonkers, that you did not need to be in this type of relationship? And then how did you sort of manage, because you were being financially abused, how did you then sort of help yourself to get out of that? How did you escape? How did you leave?
Oh, so when my kids were 4 and 7, I finally just felt like I can't take it anymore. I was feeling sick all the time. I was in fear. I just knew that I knew better than this. And so I
Hmm.
started, this was a long time ago. This was when the internet really became very mainstream. And
Hmm.
I heard the word domestic violence, and I started researching,
Yeah.
educating myself. And there was like a checklist saying, if you're experiencing these things, you are being abused. Are you being
Yep.
controlled? Are you afraid? Are you being
Yep.
gassed? All of these things. And I don't know, I just finally told my parents, and I was like, I can't take it anymore. And I told my parents, and they got me a lawyer, and we had him removed from the home. I had a restraining order. He was becoming a lot more violent, a lot more unstable at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Um,
so that happened, but then after a month of him being gone, he did the whole, I love you, I want my family back, I'll do whatever it takes. And so I was afraid. I was still afraid of him. I was still in control. I mean, I was under his control, and I was afraid to be divorced. I was a preschool teacher at the time. I didn't work full time. I didn't have any money. I was like, how am I, we had a home. What am I going to do? So I
right.
let him back.
So the confidence to even try and pick up and leave was not there.
No, I didn't know,
Yeah.
not at all, not at all. And so I let him back, and we did a little bit of counseling, but like I know now, and I didn't know then, marital counseling doesn't work with an abusive person. And so that was a big, I couldn't even speak in counseling, and God forbid I did, I'd get yelled at on the way home, and punished for whatever I said.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
then
So
Go
this
ahead.
went on for about 8 more years, you know. So he was probably, you know, there's the honeymoon period. So maybe for a couple months he was wonderful. He was
Mhm.
very charming and very kind when he felt like it. So that kind of throws you off balance because you're like, wow, now you're being nice. So then you're like,
Or they're coming back. Yeah.
did I
The person you
imagine all
fell in love
this?
with. Yeah.
Yeah. So the person that you met, you're like, oh wow, you know, you're kind, you're sweet
Right.
until it happens again. And so I stayed. It was another 8 more years of that. You know, it was like he bought a business. He didn't tell me he bought a business. I overheard him telling somebody that with our money, and then he told me how stupid I am for not knowing that he told me. Um, he closed our checking account to where didn't even have access to money. I had to ask him for money. I couldn't spend
Hmm.
anything. I couldn't spend anything for the kids. He became a lot more violent again, throwing things, pushing, kicking. You know, I just got to the point again where I was like so fearful. My kids were 11 and 14 at this time. My biggest concern was, what am I role modeling to my children? My
Right.
son, like, is my son going to think that this is how men treat women? Is my
Hmm.
daughter going to think that women just stand by and allow this? So that was really my driving force, was I've
Yeah.
got to teach my children better than this.
Mhm.
And so I did it again, told my family. I had two grandmothers who were so supportive, my aunt, my parents, my sister, best friends. And I rented a home from a friend, and I slowly took things from my home, bought my own cell phone, did my own
Good.
things,
Yeah.
and did it again. And this time I held my ground.
Good.
But you know,
Good.
this time was really bad. You know, he put our home in foreclosure, so my
Yeah.
credit was ruined. He didn't pay insurance for the children, child support. It took years and a lot of court dates to get to the point where he had to pay for his children. So had I not had my family, I would have been homeless at that time for sure.
Yeah. So you had a support system in place.
Beautiful family, yeah.
As and thankful for them, but there are a
Mhm.
lot of folks that don't necessarily have that support when they're
Right.
looking to leave. And a lot of the times people say, well, why do they stay, right?
Why do
Man
you
or
stay?
woman, right? Why do they stay? And these are some of the reasons that hold people back. And in financial abusive situations, as you mentioned, where the person is controlling all of your sort of behaviors around money, and they have sort of all of the oversight over when it comes to that, that's just another hindrance in itself,
Hmm.
right? So on top of the emotional entrapment, you have this money piece, this big piece that you
Right.
need to be able
To survive.
to restart, right? And
Hmm.
you don't have that when it's financial abuse. And so I relate to some of the things that you're talking about, because my mom, who I witnessed being physically, emotionally, and verbally abused coming up, I saw that. I saw where if if and only if he allowed her to work, um, it was because he would take the money that she earned and use it however he saw fit.
Right.
Okay, so she had zero say, like you, about where the money was spent, how it was spent. He gave her just as much as she needed to sort of help to have us get by, right? Bare
Right.
minimum for school clothes, bare minimum for food. And you watch these behaviors and you tell yourself as a child, right? And so now I'm talking about staying for the children. When a lot of folks say, I'm staying for the kids because if I leave, they won't have this amenity or this life or this father. And then it turns out because you know the kids are modeling, or in it's in being ingrained in them
Hmm.
why they think this is okay, right?
Right. Right.
Over time they begin to think it's okay. So I commend you, and
Thank you.
every other single woman that has said, I'm not doing this. My kids are the ones that are watching and are going to be modeling what I'm presenting to them. Bobby Garcia says Shelley is one of the strongest women he knows,
Oh,
and
nephew.
I love
Now
that.
I'm gonna cry.
Shout out to Bobby. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for tuning
Bobby.
in, Bobby. Um, But yes, survivors are, I don't think people understand how much it takes to leave these types of situations. It's not
Yeah.
just a black and white pick up and go. And even when, and even more so when it relates to financial abuse, you are stuck, right? You
Yes.
know, a lot of folks say, well, come stay at my house. You know, you can be here for like a month and, you
With
know,
your
till
two kids. Yeah.
it's with your two kids, but then you're thinking, well, how long is that gonna last? You say 2 months, you can, or you say for however long you need, but that
Yeah.
doesn't always jive. And then
And
you're
then the
thinking,
other
well,
aspect to it that I'd like to share too is when you're in this situation, when people say, why didn't you just leave? I think people don't understand you have zero confidence at that point. They have beat
mm-hmm,
your confidence level and your self esteem down so low, you don't
yeah,
feel confident in making any decisions of any kind. So
mm-hmm,
you're dealing with your marriage being over, you're dealing with your children living in a different place, your children crying, your children's life disheveled, but you don't, it's not, when people say, oh, I would never have allowed that, nobody understands what it's like being in that environment and being knocked down for so long.
yeah.
You're not, your mindset is not in the right place to make
Mm-hmm.
good decisions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it has to be almost when, and I also say this to folks, is that it has to be when you, the victim, is ready to get
Right.
and remove yourself from that situation, when you feel confident enough, because anything else outside of that, it sort of draws you back to your abuser. If there's an intervention and you're pulled out of the situation when you weren't ready yet, when you hadn't had closure with
Right.
what this person has done to you for all this time, when you haven't reached your breaking point yet, right?
Yeah. You're rock bottom.
Your rock bottom, then it's almost like addiction, right? When you haven't,
Yes.
like you said, your rock bottom, you have to get there to be able to know, well, okay, I am completely over with this. I'm never doing this again.
Right.
And so going back to the financial abuse, Shelley, that you experienced and when you left, what did it look like for you sort of trying to restart your life? How did you begin to restart your life? And like you said, I know you had um, your family to sort of
Family.
support you, but outside of that, how did you get back up? Huh.
I so definitely I have to say it was my family. I had
It
two
was your family,
grandmothers.
yeah.
I had my grandmothers and my parents. I had an aunt that literally were giving me money to
Mm-hmm.
survive because I didn't get child support or their health insurance or basic things for their school. I think he knew the fact that I did have family to help me, so he bare minimum did. So I didn't but it's like a horrible feeling to take money from people, even though it's your
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
You feel like I just felt terrible, and being a
Mhm.
preschool teacher, you don't make a lot of money.
Right.
Right. And then, like, I knew, like, people are like, get a second job. Well, get a second job. But, I had one child playing baseball, one playing softball, one doing gymnastics. They were doing soccer. They had all these things. And I didn't want them to have to give up these things. So I was, kind of going back and forth. I rented a house from a friend and he was wonderful. Also, my rent was very low. And I don't know, day by day, month by month, I always say it's baby steps, little baby
Mhm.
steps each time. Before I knew it, it was 3 months and then 6 months and then a year. I mean,
Wow.
I work two jobs now. I'm still a teacher and I do the domestic violence work just
Mhm.
to get by. So I work every day of the week. I work 7 days a week. So it's a big struggle, but it's definitely, I'd rather have the struggle and be alone and know that I'm making my own money and I'm making my own decisions and I'm
Peace
in
of
control.
mind.
I have peace of mind and I'm in control of my own destiny.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what a lot of the time. So most folks know I'm a survivor as well, right? And so
Mhm.
when we talk about peace of mind, I don't think people understand how much that counts,
Ah,
right? When you're in a setting where you do not have to. I still suffer from PTSD, right? And so
mhm.
I'm
I think
still
I do.
jumping. It happened tonight, right? My husband was in the room and I didn't know he was there when I walked in and I almost like passed out, right? So
Right.
you always sort
Mhm.
of still kind of get triggered by certain things and movements and
Definitely.
whatever. But knowing generally when you're in your space and you're in that setting where you don't have to worry about who's coming, whether or not they're going to get upset about this, whether or not they're going
Right.
to be able to do that to you, it means so much. So, You know, I
I
tell
always
folks,
say you're out of the chaos. You
you're
just
out of
don't
the
have
chaos.
chaos. You wake up in the morning and you're like, nobody's going to yell at me today.
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
control over what I'm doing. And like the peace of mind is just, it's worth everything that you go through to have peace of mind and no
Every
chaos.
single bit. Every
Hmm.
single bit. And it, it gets kind of worse before it gets better.
Definitely.
I'll keep it completely
For
100.
sure.
There are a lot of folks that leave the relationship and end up going back. And on average, as you know, 7 to 10
7
times.
times. Yeah.
And I get that because guess what? You leave and it's like, okay, they're calling you on the phone while you're at the shelter and saying
Right.
everything's going to be okay. I'm done. I'm never going to do that again. You want us to go to counseling? I'll go. You want me to go to church? I'll go. And then you go back and it's the same old, same old.
Right.
Yes, hashtag Liz, you're out of the chaos. Hashtag out of the chaos.
Yes.
I'm gonna post about that sometime going this.
That is great. Yeah.
But yes, it's like you're out of the chaos, but then it's like the normalcy almost is like crazy to you, right?
Mhm.
So that's another reason people go back. It's like you're in this quiet and normal setting, but you've been in the chaos for so long that you're like, my God, this is abnormal for me, right? So you'd
Right.
rather go back.
Especially with children, and you have nights where you don't have your children with you, and that to me, like, I had never been away from my children when they were with him, and it was absolutely devastating in a
Yes,
house
ma'am.
all by yourself, really, without your children. And oh, it was just terrible. So I totally
Mhm.
understand why people can go back over and over again. I would
Yes,
never judge
ma'am.
them.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I want to really reiterate tonight is that
Hmm.
you cannot and should not blame victims
Right.
if they decide that going back into the chaos is what's
Hmm.
best.
Right.
It takes time. Over everything, it takes time.
Yes.
Shar says she grew up watching her mother deal with this. I can relate to you on that, Shar. That is
Mhm.
absolutely what I dealt with as a child growing up. And I then modeled the same behavior to become a victim when I was 21. So again, when folks say that they're staying for the children, it's doing more harm than good in the long
Yes.
run.
Hmm.
And so I want you to talk a little bit about that. Joseph Shannon says, "My baby, you go, girl."
Right. Oh my God.
Is that your honey?
Yes.
Oh! We got the
So
honey joining
sweet.
live. But yes, so thank you for being who you are, Joe. In Shelley's life, I appreciate that. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it looks like to enter into a new relationship after post abuse, right? Whether it's
Right.
a year later, 2 years, 10 years later, what that looks like. So we're gonna touch on that for a second, but I want to talk about, when you left, what did your children express to you when they were out of that setting, that environment?
So they were 11 and 14. A lot of that time was so chaotic for them because
Mm-hmm.
they were living between two homes, and my daughter was very adamant. She wanted to see her parents every day, to the point of she wanted one of us driving her to school, one of us picking her up. I also wanted my kids together. So our kids went back and forth every 2 days. We lived within 5 minutes of each other. But during that time, he was still being so controlling and so mean. So he would tell the kids, if their stuff was at my house, and like, oh, I need a book for my history book. I need this. I want to wear this outfit. He wouldn't come and get it for them. And then he would tell them that I'm not allowed to bring them to his house to go get it. So it was just so chaotic for them. Like they felt like torn between the two of us, because
Sure,
he
of
was talking terribly about me. He was telling my
course.
friends that I was cheating on him. I mean, he was saying such horrible things to my children about me. So they had a very hard time. My son especially had a hard time and really didn't want to be around him a lot. My daughter she's very much like me, a people person, and she doesn't want to get anybody angry with her. So they were very torn.
I
They
can see
didn't
that.
know where their things were. Their stuff was back and forth. They were middle school age kids. They had their own, that's a horrible time on their own. They had their own life. It's embarrassing. My daughter said she was embarrassed. All her parents were married. And why did we have to get divorced? I mean,
Yeah,
it was a very, very hard time. The amount of guilt that I felt, I mean, I still feel guilty.
yeah.
I,
And
you know,
that's
the,
normal. And
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
normal.
It is normal, but I mean, you just feel so guilty. And he would tell the kids. He told the
Mm-hmm.
kids I was cheating on him. He told the kids horrible things about me. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a terrible time for us. Those first 2, 3, 4 years, and he was stalking me. He was leaving horrible. He was making fake emails and sending them to me. I had to get a restraining order. My parents had to get a restraining order. He was showing up places where I was. I had 10 flat tires. I mean, there
Wow.
was a lot going on during that time.
I want to touch on Liz Oliver Maggiani's. I hope I'm saying your name right, honey. That her comment, it says, that is exactly what has been keeping me afloat lately. It's normal, quote unquote, it's normal. I have quoted almost exactly that to the multiple therapists that she's glad to be out, that she's glad to be out. Um, and kudos to you, Liz, because it's not easy, right? As we've been
Mhm.
talking about, it's not as black and white to pick up and leave. That's not the way these issues go. And you know, these guilt trips that they sort of pour on you afterwards, it sort of adds fuel to the fire for you, right?
Right,
To make you feel like you've done something wrong when in actuality you have done the best thing for yourself and your children,
right.
but they will make you feel like the most horrible person in the world.
Hmm.
um and so Liz also says, that's awful. My daughter's father was just like that. Thankfully he has woken up a little bit through the past 11 years. Can't count the lies my daughter's father told her about me, and I'm still catching them. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that, Liz. Trust me, it's not. And I said, it gets worse before it gets better, but it does get better, and
It
that's a
does.
guarantee. And so that brings me to a couple of things. I want to talk about. Oh, thank you, Liz, for letting me know that. Thank you. I hate screwing up people's names, but she said I said it right. So yes,
Yay.
um, thank God for English class. But I want to talk about where you are now, and for a couple of different reasons. I want to talk about um, where you are at the domestic violence agency that you work with. I think is amazing. I know another survivor that also works at a DV agency answering the hotline. And I just think that is so, therapeutic to be able to do,
Yes.
right? And so I want to talk about what resources that your particular agency that you work at has for financial abuse, for people that have left, and what the space looks like. Because a lot of times people hear domestic violence shelter and they think, I know I did when I reached my breaking point and help was presented to me. I thought it was a big open room with beds with a bunch
Right.
of women that I didn't know,
And
right?
some are. I know many are, but where I work, it's more. They have their own apartment, so they don't have to share with anybody. And so what we do is we offer legal assistance, we offer financial assistance and advice, we
Mhm.
offer housing advice and try to get you into transitional housing. But
Stable
we also
housing, yeah.
we also food and shelter while you're there. Any type of services for your children. We have a school on site for the children.
Awesome.
We offer court advocacy as well.
And what does that entail? What does that mean? Because a lot of folks that I come into contact with, they do have court hearings. They do have to go to
Mhm.
court and get a restraining order. They do have to get, show up for a hearing for one reason or the other. What does court advocacy
Well,
mean?
we have legal advocates that will talk with them and give them legal advice about what the court system's going to look like to them. What's going to happen, what questions that will be asked of them. So
Hmm.
we prepare them so that when they're going in there, they know what they're walking into.
Mhm.
And also, now it's COVID time, so things are a little bit harder and a little bit different. But
Yeah.
we did used to offer, and hopefully we will soon again, an actual person at the shelter that could meet you in court and just sit with you, hold your
Yeah.
hand if you want, just to be compassionate and just to guide you through it. And just for me, I mean, I had one of my best friends go with me, and just to have somebody there with you,
Means
because
a
you have
lot.
to, a lot of times, you have to look at your abuser in the eye. And,
Mhm.
they're very charming, and
Yep.
the things that they'll say, it's very, very hard. I remember the biggest tip that I have that I tell everybody is, when you're sitting in that room, you sit in the back so that I could sit behind my abuser,
Mhm.
because he was constantly staring at me and looking at me. And it's so intimidating and
Mhm.
triggering to have him look at me with that evil look in his eye.
Oh yeah.
And, so I learned after the first time he was sitting behind me, and I was just terrified of that feeling. So every other time, and I mean, I had to go for years. I sat in the back, and it made me just feel a little bit stronger and a little more empowered that he wasn't like,
Shine.
yeah, he wasn't like
Yeah.
looking at me.
Yeah, yeah. Like you didn't have to stare at him. And it's almost like
Mhm.
a re-victimization when you have to be in court. So having,
Definitely.
between the judge talking to you and the lawyer and it's almost like they're like putting you through the whole process again, and then having
Definitely.
them there just
Hmm.
adds to it. So, if you I had Shelley sort of go through all of those points about what services that DV agencies provide, because it's just a reiteration that you do not have to do this alone. Valerie says, I would love to help one day. I remember I needed so much help and had no idea how to reach out. And that's a lot of the time where people are, and they because and they stay, or they never seek help, right?
Right.
And it's just that, right? It just stays right there.
I
Unless
also want to add that we have a lot of groups that we offer, and
group, yes.
we have outreach services where, you could still be living at home, but you could get
Mhm.
services through the outreach at all types of, all types of groups.
Yep.
And then when you're at the crisis and you're in our transitional, we offer groups as well. And, DV 101,
Yep.
financial help,
Yep.
support groups. I do the, art therapy, which is,
I
we
love
talk
that.
about DV through art therapy that we do
Art.
together. We used
Yeah.
to do it in a group setting. Now I do it online through telehealth.
Hmm.
So,
It's amazing.
mm-hmm.
And so, with all those services, so you're out of Los Angeles, California, but there are
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence agencies across
The
the
nation.
United States.
Mm-hmm.
I'm locally about 25 minutes outside of Boston, and less than 5 minutes away from Brockton, for those of you that know Massachusetts. And there's two DV agencies right in this space, right? And so having folks know that, again, you do not have to do this alone, what shelter space looks like. Every agency that I have visited, Shelley, they are all in-house settings. Okay.
Uh-huh. We have that too.
Everybody
Yeah.
has, right? Everybody has their own room. If it's not an
Mm-hmm.
apartment setting, that's their own room. And then, you share, maybe two rooms might share the same bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's usually 7 to 12, what I've seen, 7 to 12 families, whether it's an individual or a mom and their kids, that are occupying the space. So you're not coming into a setting like what I was thinking when I was faced with help, right? I thought big open room with beds, bunch of chicks that I don't know. That's
Right.
not the case, right? It's, again,
Right.
you have your own room when you go to these spaces, and it's at your pace. There
Right.
are all these services that Shelley mentioned at all the different agencies. There's group therapy, there's one-on-one, there's financial literacy groups. There
Mm-hmm.
is court advocacy, as she mentioned, somebody to go to court with you. There's legal advocacy in general. There's all these, there's childcare, there's child's play spaces for children if you have them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these settings that you can sort of take advantage of once you're there, but it's getting there and wanting to get there. That's usually the biggest thing. And to
I always
Valerie's
tell
point,
everybody it's that first phone call. If you can
it's
make
the
that
first
first
one
phone call
of your own free will,
of
not
your own
somebody
free will.
saying you need to go, you
Right.
need to do this, you should. I would never do that. You should do this. of your own free will, when you've gotten to your breaking point, these are the things and services and resources that are available to you. And that's a lot of what we do at Love Life Now, is we point people in the right direction for help. We act as sort of a hotline, but also a one-on-one to let, as a survivor, we tell people, look, I've been there, right? I know what that looks like. Same for when you call a hotline sometimes, like Shelley, who works at a hotline right now.
Mhm.
She can, empathize with what you've been through. So
Definitely.
that being said, I want to jump to entering a relationship. And before I do that, I just want to address Liz's comment. She says, I want nothing to do with being in a room with my ex, right? To being in court or the same
Mhm.
space with them. She says her date is next Tuesday, and I have debilitating anxiety about this. Quite understandable, Liz. She says he's a pathological liar. I'm also the first one to sit with my back against the wall, just like you did, Shelley,
Right.
because I feel more powerful that way. I do not
Yeah.
want to be in the room with him. If I'm in the back and any energy he throws, he will have to turn around to throw it. Girl, you better do that. That's how you take control of the situation.
Yeah.
I know
The
that's
other
right.
thing is you can ask the bailiff, which is what I did. You can ask the bailiff to stay with you and then walk you out to your car, because a lot
Yeah.
of times that they're waiting out there to berate you at your car. And
Yep.
sometimes that's when it's violent. It could be very scary and violent. So most of the time they had him leave. The bailiff had me stay there for 30 minutes, and then the bailiff walked me out. So
Good.
that's another thing to always remember.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm still reeling on the way she took her power back,
that's awesome.
a little bit, just a little bit,
Yeah,
right? And so I
yeah,
love that. Kudos to
I
you,
love it.
Liz. But yeah, and so I want to jump to a little bit about, because we talk about the bad stuff as it relates to leaving and what leaving can look like and how
Mhm.
daunting it can be, but also knowing that there's help out there. And then beyond help, I want to touch on what it looks like to be happy, right? Not
Right,
just and I don't want to just relate this to being in a relationship with another man, right? Because that's not the only way to be happy once you've exited these types of relationships. I always say, for me, a big thing was getting right with self. That was huge for me because I
Mhm.
lost myself along the way. I was in that relationship for 2 years and I lost myself. Tell me, Shelley, how you sort of, I don't want to say found yourself, because you were always there, right? But how did you
Right.
let her resurface? How did that look? What did that look like for you?
Well, it's hard to admit. I did enter another relationship after that one, which I thought was wonderful. It was for a couple years. It became a little bit emotionally and verbally abusive as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not to the extent, not physical,
Yeah.
but the put downs and the criticizing and the gaslighting and you're crazy and saying mean things and then saying, "Oh, I was just kidding. You're too sensitive."
Mm-hmm.
Um, if he was angry with me, not speaking to me for 3 or 4 days, and then expecting me to be all wonderful and fine when he decided to be fine again.
So withholding
So
emotion.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's embarrassing to admit. So that went
So
on for a
you
few
should not
years.
be embarrassed. Let me just
I
cut you. You
know,
should
I
not
know,
be
I
embarrassed.
know.
We often gravitate to what we
Hmm.
know,
Right,
and that's what you did.
right.
Go ahead.
And again, so we lived together. So there I was in financial struggle again,
Yeah.
because although I wasn't happy in the relationship and I knew it was wrong, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to live on my own again?
Yeah.
So slowly but surely, I didn't stay in it as long. I knew it was wrong. Um, I'm like, I know better than this. I'm going to work and I'm counseling people and I'm coming home to this person who's calling me names and mistreating
Yep.
me and telling me I'm crazy again.
Mm-hmm.
So that, getting that second job boosted my self-confidence, because now I was having more of my income come in.
Yep.
And I don't know, getting older, I just was like, you know what? This isn't working for me. I know better than this. I'm not allowing this anymore. And so I asked him to leave, and that was it. And
Yeah.
I wasn't as afraid. I was very uncomfortable in the home with him, but I wasn't as afraid. I wasn't as fearful. I was just, I was just I felt better, and I felt that I can more manageable,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so that happened, and then that was completely done, and just did my own thing, and then met the new my new wonderful person, without planning to.
Yeah. Wasn't looking.
No, no,
Wasn't
no.
looking. And sometimes that's how it happens, right?
Hmm.
There's a song by Deborah Cox I love to sort of point to. It's called "How." I think that's "How Did You Get Here." If you like R&B, it's a great song.
Hmm.
But it completely describes what you just talked about. Um, and and knowing that it's okay, right, to trust your instincts. From the the previous relationship and how you felt there and what you
Hmm.
recognize there, and then B for when it's good, and letting go and letting it be.
Right.
Um, it's completely okay. But I can't stress enough that when we leave these types of situations, it is so prudent to regain who we were
Hmm.
prior. Because you were
Yeah.
a whole person
Right.
before this happened to you. This phase of your life happened, right?
Hmm.
It's so important to spend time with ourselves, to be alone but not lonely, because you're
Right.
you're, you're
Right.
getting to know you again. You're figuring out what makes you tick. You're doing things that bring you
Doing
joy
things that I like to do, rather than
that
always
you like.
doing like, oh, well, you want to go there? Okay, I'll go there with you. Where do you want to go to eat? Oh, I'll have what you want to eat. That's like
Pleasing.
a hard thing for me to be like, what? I'm going to have what I want. I'm going to watch the movie that I
Yes.
want. I'm going to go where I want without worrying that
Yes.
you're going to be mad at me.
Exactly. Exactly. And those things are completely okay.
Of course.
Completely okay. And trusting yourself that it's gonna be fine with the other person. And if they're not, you sit down and you address it.
Right.
So what about my joy makes you uncomfortable?
Right.
I'm sorry. I want you to be happy too, right?
Right.
So what brings you joy? What is something that you like to do? Go
Hmm.
ahead and do it. We all can be individuals in a relationship. And I
Right.
think that's what sort of the big thing that we miss. Liz says, nah, but we are mourning the loss of ourselves and the person we thought that person was. Being happy for us is absolutely different than what our abusers consider happiness. My ex is in a new relationship, but he won't leave me alone and is feeding this poor girl BS about her.
Hmm.
Anything he says about her and happiness, whether good or bad, it's ridiculous, really. So yeah, I I completely agree, Liz. Um, and like Shelley said, that's what her ex did for quite a long time. And it's completely not uncommon for them to try to drag us through the mud, to
Right.
make us look like we're crazy, to make us look like we're psycho, to make us look like we have no sense, to make us look like we're dumb. That's all well and good. But as long as we know who we are, I
Right.
think that's also important while we're mourning the loss of ourselves, while we're looking to get back to who we were before this happened. I think that's really important to reiterate that we were individuals before these people came along.
Yes, definitely.
And we cannot forget that.
Right.
So and it doesn't take money to find yourself again. When we
Right.
talk about self-care, it's not just jet setting across the world somewhere,
Yeah.
or buying an expensive thing. It's the little things. It's allowing yourself to cry. It's letting yourself have that $10 meal at, well, $10 might be too little, but
Right.
$20 at sitting down at whatever restaurant you want to
Hmm.
spend on you. Take yourself out on a date, right?
Right. Right.
Go for a walk at the park, go running, go walking, whatever it is. These little things that amount to self-care. I know praying is a favorite of mine, right? I love talking, spiritually to my father.
Hmm.
That's a big thing for me. I get to release and I get to talk.
Right.
but I also like mafia movies. I like a good mafia movie. And
Hmm.
so when we talk about self-care, these are all the things that we want to be able to, be okay with.
Right.
Hi Deli. Deli says pathological lies who use kids or people's past to be controlling. Yes, abusers
Yes.
do that.
Hmm.
And actually, yes, they try to use that to their advantage. Really quick, going back to
Hmm.
financial abuse, because that is what this broadcast is about. We have about 5 more minutes. I
Okay.
do want to talk about one of the, there's another sort of avenue as it relates to financial abuse, and that's relating to credit.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and for me, what happened for me during the course of my relationship, even though it wasn't a huge part of the abuse, it was centered around sort of making you or telling you that you needed to live beyond your means for to be comfortable as a couple. And what I mean by that was, getting things on credit that we didn't necessarily need, but it made him happy,
Right.
so I did it. And he said, this is what would make us happy. This is what would make him not blow up. This is what would not make him hit me sometime. You know what I mean? Like when I come over, I need to watch the game. And you don't have enough a big screen TV. So now you want to please him. So you
Right.
go out and rent a big screen TV that is really not within your budget, right?
Hmm.
And again, I'm talking about for me, but then, that relationship ends and you're stuck with bad credit because
Right.
you kind of stepped outside
Hmm.
what you know to be your limit. And that's not just, the only piece as it relates to credit, but I know a lot of folks that, sort of leave these relationships and their credit is jacked because they don't know how to get up from up under the financial piece that they went through.
Yeah. Mine was as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how does Haven, the agency that you work at,
Oh.
how do you help people that have now dealt with financial abuse? How do you help them? Are there people that come in to speak about
Well,
financial
we
literacy?
do. Before COVID, we definitely did. We had community meetings, like meetings once a month, and we many times had speakers come in. We had people come in from the local colleges to help them sign up for classes. We had
Mhm.
people come and talk about financial and how literacy, and they did show them how to fix their credit. And then
Nice.
we also have people that actually work at the shelter that will work with you and help you build your credit. And then one of the groups that's offered is financial literacy as well. So
Oh,
that's a that's
nice.
a that's a huge one that we
That's
work on.
huge.
That's
That's
huge.
huge.
Yeah. We
That's
also
huge.
help financially. We have a lot of funding, and so we will help with school. We will help with a job. We will help if there's been some people that families out of state, and we have helped them fly out of state to go back to their families.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
we're
giving them that
nonprofit, so
leg up.
we have a lot of funding that helps in many ways.
Mhm. That's great. And so that's another, again, financial uh, piece of resource that I want to point
Mhm.
out, that there are, sometimes grants that agencies can help
Yes.
you with to sort of get you to the next step.
Hmm.
And in that, Love Life Now also has what's called a Get Safe Fund. I'm going to put the link in the comments. It's called the Get Safe Fund. I'm typing that in right now. So if you have left an abusive relationship and you need a leg up with domestic violence related expense, it can be anything from food that you might have had to leave behind, clothing that you had to have leave behind. Um, Sorry, it said an error occurred. Oh, oh, I got it. So anything relating to leaving and giving you a leg up to sort of get safe. It
Hmm.
can be a hotel stay because you've left and you need to get to a shelter, but the space isn't going to open up until you for another couple days. So we can put you up in a hotel for a couple days.
Right.
Anything, transportation, anything related to you leaving and getting, quote unquote, getting safe, we can help with. So I
Awesome.
urge folks to take advantage of that.
We do
Um,
that as well. People are so
yes,
afraid. They say, "I don't have a car," and it's like, so we send an Uber to pick you up to
yeah.
bring you to the shelter. So yeah, we help in any way that we can.
So don't let that be a hindrance, is what
Right,
I'm saying to you when you decide to leave, to say, well, oh, I don't have enough funding to
right.
sort of get to where I need to be, or I can't leave because I would have to leave all this stuff behind. That stuff can be replenished, and these
We have people that
can
come
help
with
you.
nothing. They come with
Right.
absolutely nothing, but we build it up again for them.
Exactly, exactly. So it's really important that you are aware of resources there, and we can always sort of point you. It doesn't matter where you are. Deli says, totally understand. My daughter's father stole my credit card to buy a lot of stuff, and that messed up her credit. When she went to court, they said they couldn't help because he knew her PIN. And again, it goes to that whole control piece. Thank you for sharing that, Deli. I know how frustrating it can be. And I think the biggest part of this is that, again, people on the outside looking in don't understand what leaving can look like, the ramifications that come with that. And getting help, and sometimes going through the process of getting help is re-victimization. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. I pray that you are at a point right now where you have found help and resources. If you still need some, please inbox us.
Mhm.
And thank you for tuning in and being a part of the broadcast. So I hope you, from listening to this broadcast tonight, that you have gotten some insight as to what financial abuse is. God forbid you ever meet someone else that may encounter this issue. Let them know that they're not crazy, that
Right.
is abuse, regardless that there's no physical scars that they're experiencing. It is abuse, and there's help for them. I want to thank my guest, Shelley. Shelley, is there any last words or of encouragement that you want to share with folks
I
as it
just want to
relates?
tell, I just want everybody to know that you can get out and you can rebuild your life. And it is so wonderful on the other side to have peace. And
Yes,
so you think that you're stuck and you think this is the rest of your life that's going to be this way, but you do not need to stay. You do not deserve to stay. It is nothing of is your fault. Um, I know a lot of times people always say, why did you allow this? We are not allowing this. It's all about power and control. And you're doing the very best you can in a very hard situation. You're trying to get through each day just to get through it. And you can get through it. You definitely
yes,
can.
yes. Each day, great, great words of encouragement, because each day above ground, it's
It's
not
hard.
easy.
It's
It's
not
hard.
easy.
It's hard. And again, I thank you for sharing and giving insight into that, because so many people can relate. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you
The
for
live
having
is
me.
going to be up where you can share it with friends, and anybody that you think might need help. We're going to continue to try to do these. I know the last time I did it, I think it was back in October or so, November or so. We're going to try to do them at least once per quarter, maybe twice per quarter. So keep joining us, keep sharing, letting others know that, there are people out here that know exactly, not, this is not, and an advocate that has never experienced this. This is an advocate that went through it. This is someone who is a survivor, right? We're talking from firsthand experience, so you can relate to see that what happened to you was not, like Shelley said, was not your fault.
Right.
So we just appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, survivors, for sharing your
You
pieces tonight. You are brave. You are strong. We love you.
believe in
And
yourself. Believe in
believe
yourself.
in yourself. We're for you right here in this corner. Um,
Hmm.
and Julie sort of closes it off with the last comment. She says, "We love you, my dear sister Shelley." So thank you guys. We appreciate
Thank
you for
you.
tuning in, and we will see you again when we have another one of these eye-opening awareness segments. Have a good
Thank
night.
you so much.
Bye.
Bye.